Hello, everyone. I'm happy to see you all here today. So my name is Kisilov Evgeny, and I hope you can hear me well. Okay, I can see people from different parts of Russia and from also Belarus. I guess this is all I managed to notice. And I'm very happy to hear you and to see you today here. My name is Evgeny Kisilyova, and Cambridge Assessment English methodologist. And today we're going to talk about creative writing at A2, B2 levels. So I guess it's time to start. Well, the aims for our webinar today is to have some basic overview of creative writing principles, what it is, what is different, if we speak about creative writing and something more classical. So we're going to talk about A2, B2 levels, about exam writing, because we are going to issue a new contest. Cambridge Assessment is offering a new contest soon, so please stay tuned. And we are going to talk about some activities, how to develop creative writing skills at these levels, and I guess these activities can be also helpful if you're trying to develop your own creative writing skills. So creative writing is kind of a buzzword nowadays, and I'm pretty sure every teacher or every English learner has heard this word, and probably you've inquired, like, what is the difference between creative writing and more classical academic writing? And if we speak about creative writing, it's the different focus. So we can say that creative writing focuses on mostly feelings, what the writer's emotions, the way the writer perceives this word, and all the emotions that are provoked by this word. Also, one of the main focuses would be entertaining the reader. So unlike academic writing, we're not trying to present information, we are trying to make people happier or make people sympathize you or empathize you. And also creative writing is about telling stories. This could be a story of your life, this could be some fiction or non-fiction story, both are possible here. And also this story is usually something that is not based on research, based on some data or something like that. Also, creative writing focuses on presenting ideas, presenting your view of this world, and your feelings about this world. So it's very emotional, it's very personal, and the main thing about creative writing is it is something that you can develop. So no sound. Okay, I can see that some people can't hear me. If anyone can, could you please? Okay. I would suggest, if you can't hear me, you should refresh the page and use Google Chrome. It helps sometimes. So, and I hope it will get better. All right. So we'll move on. If we speak about creative writing, this is something you can develop. So it is also a skill. It is also you can improve and work on that. So it's not that much about the talent as it used to be considered many centuries ago. Nowadays, creative writing is considered as a skill. And that's what we're going to talk about today. That's what we're going to focus on. So today, we are going to specifically focus on creative writing as something we can use at our lessons. So it's not about creating writing in general. If you want to become a writer and if you want to be published and issue some books, but it's about how you can use these skills, how you can use these principles at your lessons. So, okay, still some problems with sounds. All right, so if you can't hear me, I'm sure you will get the presentation later, so it will be emailed to you, and if you've missed something, you'll always have a chance to catch up. All right. So speaking about skills, speaking about developing creativity, we need to think, about some initial steps that can be important for developing your creative writing. So if we speak about writing fiction, we have the following steps, we have the following points which need to be considered. So each story, and the first part of our webinar is going to be about writing stories, will focus on or will have integral parts such as settings, characters, the plot, and actions and reactions that we need for the story. So I recommend asking yourself some questions while you're writing the story. If you are doing that, or if you're teaching your students how to do that, please train them to ask these questions to themselves. So if we speak about settings, this is where and when something is happening. So we need a person who is taking part in the story. We need the main plot line and some actions, some things that happened during this story. So let's look at all these factors a bit closer. If we speak about settings, and if you are teaching your students to write creatively, you might want them to start without something familiar to them. Okay. Still some. Yulia, can you please tell me if you can hear me, because I can see people who have problems with sound. Okay. Yeah. At least some people can hear me, and I do apologize to those who can't. Okay. So if you're speaking about settings, and you have a group of students, it doesn't matter what level you are teaching at the moment. It might be A2 or B2. So it might be flyers or some adults who are preparing for the first. So I would suggest starting with something very familiar to them. So ask them just to look around. If they're at home, pay attention to all the things that they can see. Try to remember everything. Probably you can ask them to close their eyes and try to recollect what they see. And then just basically take a pen or a pencil and write down a very detailed description of what they remember, trying to focus only on the writing process, not looking around. And then compare and see if they can add some details to their writing. So it's a very basic exercise which might help them understand the settings and focus on the details. And then, again, with the same settings, with their room, for example, or their classroom, depending on where you are, ask them to use their imagination and change some key factor in these settings. For example, imagine the same room, but what if the dinosaurs were still alive? Or the same room, what if the Earth was enslaved by aliens? How would this room be different? So it's all about developing their imagination and making them think about all the tiny details that surround them. So in this case, you can speak about any other surrounding, any other setting. That can be your room, that can be the classroom, that can be the forest where they are. So ask them to use their imagination, but start with some very basic things. Again, for any practice for conditionals, yes, could be. But this will add them this element of a story. So this will help them focus on details, focus on things that they probably haven't noticed or took for granted. So that might be helpful as an initial step. The next thing they need to choose would be the character. And very often our students start writing stories about themselves, which might be also challenging. And I would recommend starting with someone different. So imagine a person. It's always easier to look at somebody to assess and analyze the way the person moves, whether the person is probably too slim or too fat, or like in this picture, a person doesn't have one leg. So pick some of the features of this person that you like or dislike. Try to analyze it. So before you actually start writing, this is an initial step, a preparation process. And while you're assessing this person, while you're choosing a character for your story, try to avoid stereotypes, try to avoid some cliches, because otherwise the story might look a bit artificial. So writing about real people is always much, much easier than trying to follow someone's steps and write and just repeat the words of somebody else. So choose a real person and think about him or her. Also, it's a good idea for a good story to make the person memorable. Of course, we all remember this wonderful pirate from the story of our childhood because he had a parrot, because he had a specific way of speaking. So train and practice with your students focusing on these small details, because if the character is memorable, you will have more chances to create the story, to create the plot line in a more engaging and encouraging way. The next thing we need to think about before we actually start writing is the actual plot. So we need to choose what kind of story we are writing. Would it be some horror story or a romantic one? So again, driven by the character that we chose at the previous step, the type of the story might differ. The story, how believable would it be? It's a question you also need to ask before you start writing. Will it be something, I don't know, scientific, science fiction story, or will it be something closer to the real life? Again, going back to the characters, how do these characters influence your story? So do they drive your plot? Do they prevent you from making some turns in your storyline or not? The types would be the, again, as I've already mentioned, some romantic stories, horror stories. That would be also whether you would like to make it a short story or a long one. Would it be a novel? Again, if we're speaking about teaching students and about teaching them, like preparing them for exams and teaching them for exams, or like some basic writing skills, we're not talking about preparing them for the future career of writers. Yeah, some students that we can work with. So probably you won't write a novel, but it will be something shorter. So choose this type, something that is appropriate for the age, also for their level of development. I don't know, for A2, it is much easier to write stories about pirates than some philosophical ideas about the meaning of our lives. So this is what I mean by types. So also, when you're thinking about your plot and your storyline, so first of all, I would suggest brainstorming the ideas, creating some kind of a pot with ideas where you can put pieces of paper together as a group, and then picking them and choosing whether it's appropriate for you or not, and writing a story according to this idea or not. And think of what could be in the story. Write down as many details and as many ideas as you can within some period of time, and then try to get rid of everything that doesn't drive the plot. So all the redundant parts. Also, when I'm speaking about, yeah, I can see the questions, just a second. When you're speaking about the plot, it's a good idea for students to make it more visual for them to draw kind of a diagram. So you can see the picture here, and what I suggest is to draw a diagram where you put all the ideas. So what will be the highest point? Where do the characters lead you? And then you will have it more visually organized, and you will be able to add some more details. Speaking about writing backwards, I can see the question about it. So think about the final of your story. How is it going to end? What is going to be the main point of it? And start with this ending, basically. And try to reconstruct how the story began, what preceded this ending. Speaking about the number of signs, it depends. Of course, if you're writing a story for the exam, you should look at the exam criteria, like 35 words or more for key students, for example, or 120 for B2 first. It depends on the students, it depends on the group. So if we're speaking about the contest, which I just mentioned, I would say that the number of words will be limited. We'll talk about it later, so I missed these slides, and I'm going to get back to them a bit later. So it depends on the task, if you're writing it for the task. Okay, the next thing, which is important for creative writing, of course, is language. It's not because we're studying English, it's also because the language is what makes your story attractive and, let's say, readable, and what prevents your students from, or your readers from, going on. So I would suggest starting from some basic descriptions. You've chosen the character, you've chosen the settings. Start with basic descriptions of it. Think about the language, the adjectives that might be helpful to get the idea across. And then gradually think about synonyms. Every line and adjective, well, it depends. I wouldn't say that it has to. It has to sound natural. And this is exactly what I'm going to say. So don't make an impression that you're trying too hard. It has to be natural. And if the adjective fits into the sentence, of course, you should have one. If it doesn't, then having it just for the sake of having it, there's no point in doing that, because it will sound a bit artificial, as if you are not writing a story, but as if you are just trying to fulfill the task. And if you speak about creative writing, it's more about writing stories, more about expressing yourself. It is an element that can be used for exam preparations, definitely. But there's no such thing like have 5 adjectives in your text or 10 adjectives. So don't do that. Make it natural as much as possible. Speaking about language, there is one resource that I would recommend. It's called visuwords.com. And I would say it's more appropriate for B2 level students, maybe B1. So if you go to this website, you can type a word, and it will give you all the possible collocations, words, associations. So give it a chance, try it out, and your students might do it on their own, just to extend their vocabulary. Keeping a writing diary is a very helpful tool for the preparation process. Of course, the more you are exposed to the language, the better you become as a writer. I guess it's quite obvious. So some students still think that it's enough just to read something, but it's a good idea to note down some words and collocations if you come across a good description. So why not just jot down some ideas? And the last thing about language is avoid cliches. Again, don't make the reader think that you were trying too hard. If you can avoid using a cliche and write it with some normal words, do it. It's much better, and it makes a very good impression. Yeah, visual words, you have the link here. It might be limited. It depends on the level. and still you are the person who can, as a teacher, you can help your students and maybe brainstorm some more ideas. Feel free to do that, of course. Okay. Very often, when we have already created the character, or we already have some ideas what the story is going to be about, we are waiting for this inspiration part. So when the muse comes to us, it doesn't happen sometimes too often, so we need to find inspiration in the basic things. I would like you to look at this spiral and find 3 words that just pop up. So what are the first 3 words you see? What gives you inspiration? And type them in the chat. Let's see if you see the same. Okay. Oh, wow. You can see all of words at the same time. Amazing. All right. So this is a limited list of what inspires people. But anyway, this is something that is accessible at the lesson. We can always give our students some quotes. We can provide them with some smells, sounds, some pictures. It doesn't matter what level you're teaching. All these things might give them inspiration. But maybe you have something else that inspires you. So I can see some exhibitions. What other things can inspire you to write? All of them at once. That's amazing. Nature. Food. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, wow. Analysis of the person. All right. Mm-hmm. Smells. Justin Bieber. Wow. Okay. Well, you have a lot of things that inspire you. Great. So, all these things can be used in the classroom. Probably motivated students. Okay. Music and nature, mood, smell, all these things can be inspiring, and all these things can be used at the lesson. So let's have a look at some of my ideas. For example, yeah, so all these things that I have here and a lot of your ideas. So this is a tangerine or a clementine, it depends on what you call it. And this is something that can inspire students for writing stories. So what's your first association with this picture? What does it make you think about? Smell, New Year, food. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So a tangerine is actually a very powerful tool. So you can just bring a tangerine to your classroom and have a great lesson, a creative writing lesson. So ask your students to close their eyes, start feeling it. They will feel the smell. They will start thinking about New Year, Christmas, whatever you like, about presents, about Santa Claus, about food, of course, yeah, if you have hungry students, and it will immediately provoke some ideas. It will immediately provoke some associations, some stories connected to that. Ask your students to jot down all their ideas. So even without consciously considering them, just to note them down. And then you might accumulate all this information and write a story about the new year, about presents, or I don't know, about your breakfast, if this is something that it inspires you. About good mood, why not? So this is a very powerful stimulus for your inspiration and for your creative writing. So just peel a tangerine, ask them to write an abstract about it. How we can use it online? I'm not sure you can use a tangerine online. However, you can ask your students to bring something to the classroom. So just go open their fridge, find something that they like, bring it to the screen and show everybody. I'm pretty sure they can also see different things, and then they can get inspired. I'm sorry, I don't think our technologies are developed enough to, get this smell across, but you might want to try. Okay, short videos, of course, why not? Sound of the sea, yeah, you stimulate their oh, I've completely forgotten the word, but I hope you got my idea. Picture of a tangerine, yes. By the way, if you look here, yeah, the previous slide, and if you speak about sounds, it can be the sound of the sea, the sound of the ocean, I don't know, birds singing. Also, if you go to this website, you will have access to a lot of different sounds. So this is BBC Library of Sounds, and there will be everything. I don't know, starting engines, some cartoon sounds, I don't know, some screams or different animals, well, anything. You can even create a sound story. I guess at some of the previous webinars, I presented a sound story, which can lead to storytelling and creative writing also. Okay, let's move on. So another way of inspiring is a quote or is the beginning of the story. And if you're preparing your students for the exams, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this task. When your students get the very first sentence of the story and they have to write something about it. So to create pictures in their brains, to provoke this process of inspiration, of creation, you might provide a set of different objects. Like here we have the box. And each of these boxes would provoke different types of stories. I'm pretty sure one of them will be about pirates. Another might be about traveling. So something about space or birthdays. Again, if we speak about creative writing, if we speak about training, show your students these boxes, ask them to choose one and write a short paragraph about it. It depends on you what you choose. It can be the beginning of the story that they write. It can be like the ending of the story that they write, or the middle of the story. But it has to be somehow connected to this box. Yeah, so in the end, the pirates, I don't know, found the treasure, or they buried the treasure somewhere. Ask them to create the setting for this story. Ask them to think about the character who can take part in the story, and write down some ideas. Beginning, middle, end, absolutely. Even if we're talking about creative writing and not something more classical or academic, the layout, the genre features are still the same. You still have to present your story in a way of beginning, middle, and end. If you're a very talented person, why not change it and put the ending, so swap the end and the beginning, and then you tell the story backwards. It also works. However, it's a bit more complicated than the traditional way of doing that. Okay, visuals. I guess someone has already mentioned visuals in the chat. So I got a picture here. It's not about food. Thank you very much. So let's think about some original name to this story, because our stories are supposed to have names or Snake and fish, something original. So some hunting, okay. All right. So we have some names. Depending on the level, they can be different, yeah? Starting from, oh, happy together, stolen breakfast, amazing. I have a lot of creative people. All right, so I would suggest for this activity to write a story. You have amazing ideas, seriously. Okay, you can ask your students to write again a paragraph about it, some associations, some context, some settings about the picture, maybe some characters. Are you the person, are you the fisherman who saw this? Are you the fish who is being taken from one part of the river to the other? Or are you the snake who is happy to see the breakfast? You can tell the story from any character from this page. Never give up. Fairy tale. So it can be absolutely any type of the story. Yeah, and it has already provoked a lot of ideas. I'm pretty sure your students will be able to do the same. Again, so ask them to write something. Ask them to write a story. Where did it all begin? How did we all get here? Autobiography. Well, I would like to read that, seriously. I can't think of anything you can write there, but a brilliant idea. Thank you very much. Autobiography. So different types of writing, different language can be used here. Different titles. Yeah, this is how visuals can provoke ideas. Another way of inspiring your students. Okay. Another way of inspiring your students would be using something they already have. And you've already asked me about some online activities. Okay, I'm pretty sure your students have some kind of a library at home. They are sure to have at least some books. So ask them to go to the bookshelf, pick any random book, and open it on a random page with their eyes closed. Just point at some place in this book on this page and just pick a random word. So something that they are pointing at. Choose 5 words before, look at the 5 words before, look at the 5 words after. And again, put it into your story. It can be the middle of your story. It can be the beginning of your story. Just continue it. Again, try to bear in mind all those ideas about creating good language, not using cliches, having some adjectives there. But again, this is also something you can change when you are editing it. So it's up to you. First, you need to start with something. You get the idea, write something about it. All right. I'm pretty sure everybody is just now leaving their places and going picking some books. By the way, it can be quite interesting depending on the library your students have. So you might end up with a great variety of topics. So also be careful with that. Okay. Developing one sentence into a story is also an important technique for creative writing, and this is helpful for all the levels. So you can choose any comic from, you can choose it, I don't know, in the internet, and just close the part with the words and ask your students to create one single sentence about the picture. Again, you already have the settings, so you have some kind of a context, and caveman family. You already have ideas. I don't even need to ask you. Great. So think about the type of your story. So I don't know, can be a romantic one, can be a horror one, So I would like you now to choose the type of your story. Think about one sentence that would be in this speech bubble. So what does the boy say? Can you write some ideas in the chat? Let's see if somebody can guess what actually is there. Ancient education. I need a sentence. Oh, okay. I can see some life stories here. I'm sorry I'm late again and again and again. I can see some hungry people. Amazing. Okay. Okay, a T-Rex ate my homework. I like that. Painted the cave for today. Okay. So you have a sentence. All of you now have a sentence. The task for you will be, not now, don't do it now, that you can start with this sentence and continue the story. What is also important here is that it gives your students the idea of using direct speech in the story. So they can put some dialogues into the story to make it more vivid, more natural. And they can build the whole story around this dialogue. Okay. All right. Let's see what actually is in the speech bubble. So, I'm sorry, it's a moment of black humor here, but I guess we are all teachers and it won't hurt you too much. So you can use this sentence, or you can ask your students to create their own. It's up to you. Okay. Let's move on then. Another tool for preparing your students for creative writing, giving them kind of a template. And for example, this one is about a summer trip. And this technique, this game is called Mad Libs. I'm sure you've heard about it. If not, so I'm going to briefly tell you. You can find these worksheets online. There are a lot of them. Just search for Mad Libs. They are of different levels, appropriate again for flyers, appropriate for first. You can create them yourself. The thing is, the story needs to have gaps in it, and each gap should be specified. Mad Libs is not an app. Mad Libs is let's call it an activity. Actually, it's a game for creating some stories. So the idea is you have a template with a text, and in this text you have gaps. Each gap is specified. So for example, in this particular gap, you need to write down name of a person. In the next one, you need an adjective. The other one would be a verb with an S ending. So it depends on you. It can also depend on the topic, on the level of your students, or probably you would like to not only teach creative writing, but to practice some vocabulary, also possible. Anyway, it gives your students some idea of how the story should look like. Mad Libs for pre-A1. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can find something. Thank you very much for the link. Okay, so you ask your students, you can either ask them to brainstorm some adjectives, for example, and write them down, or you can just give them the template and they complete the gaps. In the end, they will have all absolutely different stories. Again, you might choose the type of the story, and you might do it as a group and write the story together, like some kind of a collaborative writing, or they can do it on their own. This particular exercise is not so much about creative writing because they don't create the whole story themselves. but it gives them the idea of what the story should look like, and it gives them some practice of using a variety of words to describe feelings, emotions, actions, and to create their absolutely personal and particular plot. So you might give it a chance. Again, writing a story and using some visuals. So what I would suggest now, and it's something I would like you to do. So you have a picture, which is appropriate probably more for like A2, maybe B1 students. This picture was found on the internet, so it's just a picture with a lot of actions in it. So what you need to do, imagine that you are somebody or something from this picture. So you can either be the walrus, or you can be the parachute that the boy is using. You can be the door on the house. So you can choose a person or an object in the picture. Try to write a sentence that will describe your day. So you are the door, autobiography, yes, probably. It's also might be good for practicing some tenses if we're speaking about, I don't know, grammar. Yeah, I'm the door, I'm sad, I'm always sad, yes. But what happened? So, my dear door, what was your day like? Was it a sad day when suddenly you saw a lot of people in the swimming pool? Or somebody slammed you so hard that you were absolutely unable to enjoy the fun of the party? So ask you, it can be also kind of a crime scene if you're writing a detective story. So what did the door see? What happened to it? What was its day like? What about the gun? So it's more for like B2 students. Ask them to write the story as if they are objects from this picture or objects from this setting. Let me just have a look at the answers. Snowman. Oh, okay. Wow. So you can do it from the part of the yellow submarine. Oh, some sad stories about the pencil. Okay, so as far as I can see from your answers, it's absolutely appropriate for A2 level. Somebody's drinking me. Somebody drank me yesterday. I didn't feel comfortable. You don't necessarily have to specify who you are. You might ask your partners to guess, and that will give you more challenge, and that will give you more, I don't know, motivation to write it. So explain all the details of your day so that the partner can guess who you are. Okay, thank you very much. Some wonderful stories. Okay, so again, ask them to write a paragraph, ask them to write a couple of sentences, or you can ask them to write the whole story. So this particular exercise helps with settings, action verbs, some adjectives, and the sequence of these actions. Okay. Amazing ideas. Your COVID that made you mad. Okay. I need to screen this chat really, because a lot of ideas. You can just get the ideas from the chat, and here you are. You have the first sentence for any story you like. Thank you very much. All right, let's move on. This, again, is an activity for writing stories, for practicing using different adjectives. We had some questions about adjectives, so this is the one. Have a look at this story. What's wrong with it? Nice. Yeah, it's too nice. Seriously, yeah. So I would suggest changing this adjective. Yeah, replacing it with something else. This is a common problem, by the way, for all our stories. Our students overuse nice and interesting. So replace it with something. Again, you can turn it into a horror story. You can not write here the final sentence and ask them to finish it. The thing is, when you are teaching, when you're training your students for creative writing, it's a good idea to give them something to start with. Because if you just, I don't know, give them a visual and say, okay, write a story. Or, okay, write a story about your summer. That might be sometimes too challenging for them. They might get lost. Provide some prompts, provide some ideas to make it easier. So if it's a consequence, it's a sequence of pictures, they can see the story, especially for A2 levels. So don't just throw them into this pool with sharks. Okay. So you asked for something online. This is an online activity. We all know these emojis from our WhatsApp, or you can find them, I guess, in every messenger now. Ask your students to pick random emojis and send them to their partners. Write a story based on the sequence of these emojis. Wow, I can see some answers about the nice. Okay, good. So sequence of these emojis. Write a story. Again, it helps them choose the settings. It helps them choose the characters, probably, and the type of story. Yeah, just exchange the messages. Can you hear me now? Yes! That's amazing. I guess we've all just had some kind of connection problem. No sound? Yes, you can. So you're still with me? Yeah, I have some other things to say. Me too. Yes, happy to see you back. I hope you've already written a couple of stories while we were away. Haven't you? I've given so many ideas, so you're supposed to have written at least a paragraph. Okay, so refresh the page. It might help. Yay. Okay, so we're going to start over, not from the very beginning, but this very slide to the place we missed. I guess this was the place you missed. So no sound, no picture. Okay, refresh the page. Just try. So the emojis, yeah, writing the story about the emojis, and this next one was this one. So it's based on the test, which is supposed to measure creativity. Okay. So you have some pictures here, and the task for the students would be to complete the picture and to create some picture about their summer holidays, for example, and then write a short story based on it. So this is something you might suggest them doing. So, and this is something you might yourself try to do, because actually it appears to be extremely interesting to complete these small drawings. And if you can see food here in the picture, feel free to draw food. Okay, so you can also, if you're not sure about how this thing works, you can try to Google the creativity test, and it will show you different ideas, different pictures with these doodles. So this is just another way of doing things. And well, the next thing would be the homework, which I personally gave my students. If you've ever listened to the radio play Cabin Pressure, you probably have heard about the traveling lemon. So the idea is that, no, you didn't miss a lot of information, and you will get, I hope you will get the recording of the webinar. So the traveling lemon. Ask your students to basically take a lemon, or it can be an orange, it depends on your students, an apple. And during their summer holidays, take some pictures of this lemon in different places. And then write a short story about where the lemon traveled to. So what happened there to this lemon? How did the lemon feel? So they create a short story, maybe about 100, 150 words. It depends on what task you give them. And they also have some visual aid. They also have some proofs that it really happened. As for this summer, probably I expect my students to have some pictures of, I don't know, cows, fields, probably some boring stuff with television, but they will still have to write something, and it's not going to be only about them, it's going to be about this wonderful fruit. Okay, so an idea for the homework. Well, I don't think we have a lot of time to talk about articles, but articles also can be a type of creative writing, and it will definitely have some elements. So first of all, article will have a catchy title, and this is something your students will have to think about. They will need to add some settings in the introduction. They will need to show positive attitude, and they will also need to create a good plot for their article. So to make it interesting for the reader, to add their feelings, to add their emotions, so make it again personal, maybe sometimes informal, but still to hold the interest. Some rhetoric questions is also a device used for articles, and it can be an element of creative writing. So feel free to use it. And some language that will help your readers visualize the ideas. While you're doing a creative writing task, it's a good idea to ask yourself some questions. So, does it describe what I mean? Is there a better way of saying that? Have I drafted and edited it enough? Have I made the right choice of words? Does this character actually add something to my story? Or it means nothing, so it's redundant, I can get rid of it. So keep asking questions to yourselves. Teach your students to ask questions. Maybe ask them to write questions to their peers. That will be helpful for them. And another important aspect is publishing, because we all know that just writing things and throwing them away or putting them in a pile somewhere in a box in the deep dark corner doesn't work. So it's not inspirational and it's not motivational for our students. That's why I would suggest having some kind of a class library, creating mini books. I'm a big fan of them. Having some group newspapers, posters. So find ways of publishing their pieces of writing, their stories or their articles or whatever they might write. So probably online, some blogs. Please remember that it's a crucial part of any writing process. So some tips. Read before you start writing something. Read as much as you can. So the more exposure your students have, the better writers they become. Turn writing into a daily habit. For example, now when your students are on holidays, ask them to write one sentence like every day. If you don't have many students, they can just text you these sentences or put somewhere in a Google document, for example, so you can see the progress, or at least pretend that you see the progress, and they pretend that they are doing their homework. But you have to do it, they have to do it every day. Okay. Drafting and editing is also crucial for creative writing. Draft it, write it. Try not to correct anything while you're writing. Try to give your mind a chance to put some ideas on the paper. Edit it, then edit it again and again and again, so till you're absolutely happy with the product. So I have a set of some links for websites with ideas, prompts, the sounds library, and the very last point here is the book that I would recommend everyone to read. So it's not that much about teaching kids, it's more about introduction, so it's more about creative writing itself. So if you want to become a good writer, if you want to develop this, have a look through the book. And there was a slide which I actually missed, but I would like to pay attention to it too. That this summer, 2020, Cambridge Assessment English has a contest. So I'm pretty sure your students are able to take part in it and will be happy to take part in it. And you as teachers will be happy to take part in it. So it's for 4 levels. So A2 flyers, A2 key, B1 preliminary, and B2 first. So your students will have to write some works that might be stories or articles, depending on the level. They will also have to provide some visuals. And also, yeah, so you can see here what they have to write. And also there are some nice prizes for that. So I'm sure it's going to be motivational. So wait for some details. They are coming. And if you have mails from Cambridge Assessment English, I'm pretty sure they will send you all the details soon. Yeah, National Geographic is funny. I love all the pictures from it. Okay, have you got any questions? Good job to you too. You had amazing ideas about the pictures. I didn't even expect them. Okay, so thank you very much. It was a pleasure to work with you, and I hope you will start writing, and your students will also start writing, and you will all have a lot of fun doing that. Okay, so thank you very much. Have a nice day. Have a nice summer. Take care, and bye-bye.